All right, bro, we're back at Manifest. That's pretty cool to be back, man. Yep. Yeah, right where it started.
I know. It's a full circle moment. It's kind of crazy to think just a year ago we were sitting here doing our first ever.
Pretty cool. And I think we're going to, have a great time with the guest today. She's a dear friend of ours, but super cool to have Misty on our podcast, Speak Easy. She's been a friend. I've known Misty forever. But she's been incredible for the chamber, incoming chair of the chamber and chief strategy officer at GATE. She has a beautiful family and she's poured her life into Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. And so I think the guest we have today is going to be a lot of fun for the citizens of Jacksonville to get a chance to meet.
Very familiar conversation for us, but the people will get to hear all about her.
Super, super cool. So Misty Skipper, welcome to Speak Easy Jax.
Hey guys. Thanks for dressing alike today and not wearing baby Gap clothes.
Yeah, so we actually wore shirts that fit today.
Appreciate that.
we thought we've heard enough about the baby Gap. So I think that I actually wore a medium shirt today.
It's pretty interesting because people think that we plan to dress alike, but a lot of times we just show up with similar clothing. And
kind of been that way since 8th grade. Right. So we'll hopefully keep it going. But.
So Carrie Stewart is one of my best friends, and she and I show up wearing almost the exact same outfit at least 75% of the time. And so I
you
feel
get it, right?
I get it, absolutely.
That reminds me of when we were in London a couple years back, and you had the most beautiful dress for the Jags party. And I mean, she looked.
Thanks for bringing back this traumatic memory.
So good. And we get to the party, and there is a lady with the exact same dress on, and you walk in, you go, "Oh man!"
And it was not subtle. It was loud and it was blue and orange, and had a giant print on it, and there was no hiding the fact that we were wearing the exact same dress.
At that point, you got to just embrace it, right?
They did. But on the way there, Misty was owning that dress and walks in and just like, "Oh man,
here we are."
Can you believe this? That anyway, incredible opportunity today. I do want to say, since we're at Manifest, we ought to give a little cheers. And Misty is so glad to have you on Speak Easy Jax.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
So as you know, pretty good.
Great.
That's good.
It's really good.
As you know, one of the main things we like to do here on Speak Easy is just to find out the story behind the story. Yeah. And so why don't you walk us through what it was like in your house when you started out? What was your family like? And how did you end up in Jacksonville?
Sure. So was born outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My mom was a school teacher. My dad was a golf pro at a small golf course, same golf course where his father had been a golf pro. His grandfather had been a golf pro. That's cool. It was, really generational. I literally grew up on the golf course, driving golf carts, all of that from a really early age. But we were in Pittsburgh in the early to mid 80s when the economy just tanked. And it was a really tough place for a person who was dependent on golf business, right? When people lose their disposable income, that becomes hard. And they actually were closing schools left and right because so many people were leaving the area when the steel mills were closing that my mom got laid off too. And so my dad had gone to Central Florida for a PGA golf show, literally called back to my mom and said, "I've rented us a house. I have a job. As soon as Misty finishes school, come on down." Wow. So picked up our family at the end of the school year and we moved to Kissimmee, Florida.
What was that transition like? Did you like it immediately, or were you like, everything kind of in a
I was pretty young. I was in first grade, so I didn't really recognize what was going on. I had one sister at that point. And so the two of us kind of became a little unit, right? Because that was all we knew. But we lived in a rental house for a year, and then my parents built a house that we moved into. So, and then the rest of my family started migrating this way too. My dad's parents built a house 5 doors down from where my mom and dad lived. Wow. They still live in that same house. So it was great having grandparents 5 doors down from us my entire childhood.
Makes me think about in Jacksonville when the Pittsburgh Steelers play. The stands are full of Steeler fans, and they all live in this area, and they're Jags fans until the day the Steelers show up. And you realize, I remember when we took our leadership trip to Pittsburgh a couple years back, how many people just left the state of Pennsylvania.
It was an interesting experience. I remember that trip well. It was Darnell Smith's trip, because I was so young when that transition happened. I didn't fully appreciate what had happened. But listening to the people in Pittsburgh talk about how devastating it was and how many families were going through the same thing that my family went through, it was almost an emotional experience to kind of appreciate what this entire city went through was the exact experience my family had. So.
And now it seems to have bounced back pretty well.
Yeah.
It has.
I went to a few games a few years back, and those fans are incredible. The Steelers fans, second to Jags, but we're the most optimistic fan base in the NFL. But just to see the way people come together in Pittsburgh, it's a unique experience.
It really is. And to your point, my grandfather, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago, was a diehard Steelers fan till the day he died, so they really carried that passion for that city and that team with them wherever they went.
So what was your house like when you were in Orlando? Describe what it was like growing up there. What was the family like?
So I have two sisters. One sister is 3 years younger than I am. My other sister's 8 years younger than I am. And we were athletes. My sister Kelly and I both played softball from a very early age. In early days, I was a pitcher, Kelly was a catcher, and we used to fight on the mound. Wow. And when she would get mad at me, she would roll the ball about halfway, and I'd have to walk out and pick up the ball. And,
I remember telling my brother, "You jerks, throw the ball back."
Throw the ball back, yeah. So we fought a lot, as siblings who were that close in age probably did. And but yeah, we focused a lot on sports. My parents divorced when I was in my teens. And, God bless my mom, drove my sisters and I to practice every day and coached us when she could. And she was, I still now probably have a much greater appreciation for what she actually did, knowing how my husband and I now struggle to keep up with 2 kids. I mean, she kind of did it on her own for a lot of years with 3 of us. So really, really appreciative of everything that she did.
You think about, especially working moms, single working moms.
Yeah.
I mean, it is absolutely crazy what TJ and I take for granted. You go home and you rest after the long work day. And then that usually is when the work starts for single moms.
Yeah.
And just needs to be appreciated.
Right. Yeah. So she really was great. But played softball, played volleyball for a number of years. I was tall. I didn't play basketball. I think I didn't play basketball out of spite. Because everyone used to say, hey, you should play basketball. You're really tall. And so I think I just didn't, because I didn't want to do what everybody thought I should do. So played volleyball. Wow,
that's a big surprise.
Yeah.
Did that carry into your high school years? Were you like a high school athlete as well?
I was a high school athlete.
Yeah.
Is this a leading question? Do you know where this is going?
Not at all.
I did play high school. I played softball through my senior year of high school. Had a couple of junior college, offers, but just didn't want to go into college. But had a really successful team in high school. We made it to the state championship Final Four a couple of times. So it was a good opportunity.
Which high school were you at in Orlando?
I went to Osceola High School, which is in Kissimmee. So, yeah.
Nice. So what brought you to Jacksonville? Where was the transition?
Yeah. So went my freshman year of college to Valencia Community College, and then decided that I was kind of ready to get out of Dodge. And had a friend who had moved up here and was going to UNF, and thought, what the heck? So ended up moving up here, going to UNF, and just really liked the city.
Right.
And then met my husband my senior year of college, and his family all lived here. And so ended up staying after college.
So tell us how, so your husband's name is Mike, and he's a dear friend of mine. One of the jokes we have, T, is that Misty and I are a lot alike. And
Mike and Rebecca.
If you want to know somebody who is Rebecca Davis in the male version, that is Mike Skipper.
It's so awkwardly similar. Yeah. I mean, you can almost predict what the other one's going to do just because you're married to their doppelganger there in some ways.
It is pretty funny.
And just so the people watching or listening know, they are very sweet people.
Yes.
y'all are very driven people. Sweet too, Misty, more so than
Thanks.
Daniel.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I don't think you've ever called me sweet before.
No, he said more me, just to be clear.
So Mike Skipper, one of the finest people I've ever met. How did you guys meet? What's the story behind that?
So it's funny how life kind of comes full circle in things. We were on opposite sides of a debate in a political science class.
Of course.
And the debate topic was whether 19 was the appropriate number of people to represent the city of Jacksonville. And
on the city council.
On the city council, right. And so he was on one side of the debate. I was on the other side of the debate. My debate team kind of got a little wayward. And so his team took pity on me and we ended up doing a bunch of research together. And so that's how I ended up meeting.
Research together.
He knew what he was doing.
That's right.
Probably his idea.
We should bring research together. Yeah.
Mike will tell you though, if you ever ask him this story, their team won. They,
Well, that was going to be my next question. Which side were you on, and then which side?
I wish I remembered TJ. Maybe I've blacked it out. I don't know, but he will tell you that they definitely did win. Although I told Daniel in a recent story that just to set the record straight, anyone who knows me will not be surprised by this. I actually asked Mike out on our first date.
Oh wow!
Yeah. We were studying together.
Yes.
But he had a friend that was in his fraternity that played in a band that was playing out at Lynch's Irish Pub. And so I was friends with his fraternity brother too and suggested that we go. And the rest is history. The rest is history. We started dating in November of 1997. So, yeah.
And that was also the last time he won a debate against you, right?
We'll go with that.
Yeah. So were you a great student? Because you're always like one of the smartest people that I go to whenever I'm having a crisis or whenever the city is dealing with something.
You're very kind.
Was it easy for you to?
I was an average student.
Yeah.
I got by. I originally went to college thinking I was going to be a pharmacist. I wanted to be a chemistry major and go into pharmaceuticals. But I realized pretty quickly after a couple of semesters of chemistry that I was too much of a people person and I didn't want to spend my life in a lab or behind a counter. So I transitioned away from that, ended up majoring in political science, which has served me well in my years. But I was a fine student. I think what I appreciate most about my education is that it taught me to be a critical thinker.
Yeah.
And that's what, when I talk to kids now who are trying to figure out what to major in or something in college, I always say it almost doesn't matter what you major in, right? Very few people, unless you're really specific, end up going into the field that they study. It really is teaching you how to process information, how to be a critical thinker, how to be a good writer, how to communicate. Those are kind of some of the key functions that I think come out of that. And so thankfully I was able to pull that out and keep my, be average through college.
I'm interested in hearing from your perspective what UNF was like back then as opposed to now, because we know it's grown quite a bit.
Yeah.
And are you still pretty involved with UNF, or as an alumni?
I probably should be more involved than I am. I feel very, blessed to go through that organization. It served me really well. It made great connections. I made, great friends while I was there. It was very different. I mean, we had a fraction of the students and the majority of them at that time really felt like they were commuters. There was very little on-campus housing. And so it really was just a different environment. It was not your traditional college, kind of University of Florida or Florida State on-campus experience. Back then, they used to joke that, UNF stood for You Never Finish, because everyone would go and then eventually you end up getting sidetracked or whatever. But yeah, I'm really, really impressed with how they've grown that school and what they've done since that time.
Yeah.
And what it means for our workforce. I mean, they're producing 20,000 students every year to go into our workforce. And it's pretty cool to see that
it really
throughout
is.
our university system.
Yeah.
So University of North Florida,
Yep.
You locked down Mike Skipper. And then what is next? Like, where did you enter your profession?
I started right out of college. I started at CSX. Took the first job that I could.
Little.
took any job they would be willing to pay me for. So started out as the tuition aid administrator, and also used to process pre-employment tests. So if you were applying for a job and you took a, pre-employment math or something, I used to evaluate all of those and help the hiring group. And then as soon as a job opened up in the communications and public affairs team, I moved over there. And so, which is really what I always thought going through college that I wanted to be a lobbyist. And then when I got into CSX and got into the team that did communications and public affairs, I realized I did not want to be a lobbyist. I really kind of gravitated toward the communication side. So I spent 6 years at CSX. Had a boss at one point who told me that the time I spent there was like dog years. Every 1 year I worked there was worth 7 years experience somewhere else. So thankful for that experience. But at the end of the day, took some really unique and great experiences and transitioned them into other roles.
Did Mike go straight to CSX as well?
He was actually already there.
Oh, wow.
So, he started at CSX when he was 21 years old. He's 51 years old now. So he just celebrated his 30th anniversary.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
It's pretty crazy.
Especially through the crazy.
He has seen some craziness. That is for
So
sure.
the dog years experience type thing, is that just because there's so much happening, so many different things happening that you have to deal with when you're in a position like that?
You really do.
Yeah.
And again, in that communications team, you touch a little bit of everything. So did a lot of crisis communications, did a lot of the financial communications for the company. And so dealing with either random crisis that came up or things that occurred, sometimes out of our control. You really learn to process things fast. In the time that I was there, we had some really terrible tragedies. There were Amtrak accidents where people died and you were having to deal with the crisis associated with that. You had a major fire occur in the Howard Street Tunnel, which is the main tunnel that goes through downtown Baltimore. We had to evacuate a large portion of the city of Baltimore, which was not a fun experience. And then, things like our chairman at the time, who was a man named Jon Snow, not from Game of Thrones. He was named U.S. Treasury Secretary by George W. Bush. And so that was probably one of the most interesting work experiences I've ever had.
What was it like? I mean, I remember that from reading it in the paper, but what was it like on the inside?
So early December, the president announced he was naming them. I think his Senate confirmation was the end of January. So there's about a 60-day period. And so it's pretty much all I did from the moment he was announced until his Senate confirmation was work with the Treasury Department and with the White House to make sure that you secured his confirmation. So if any one of you ever consider a cabinet level position, just know that it really is, they look at everything. I mean, one of the things I remember very distinctly, we were in a meeting one day on an unrelated topic, and my assistant came in and knocked on the door and said, the White House is here. They need to talk to you about something, or not here. They were on the phone. They need to talk to you about something. I said, okay. And you go and you get on the phone and they're like, we need you to go find Mr. Snow. We need you to ask him about this particular incident that happened in the early 70s.
What? The
I'm
early
like,
70s?
Great. We're in, early 2000s at this point, and they uncovered something from 30 years ago that they had a little bit of concern about. And so we go and talk to him. He explains it. We give him the information. They're like, okay, great, thanks. But they really were doing that level of in-depth analysis.
Today with camera phones, all the electronic opportunities to do something that you shouldn't do. And back then it was he said, she said.
Right.
There was no way to prove it, and they still found out.
They still found stuff like that. So there's no telling who all they interviewed or who all they talked to. But so the culmination of this is kind of a funny story. We had to prepare these binders, basically, that outlined every major decision or issue that had happened at the company during his tenure there. And he had been there for a number of years. And we had a dual purpose, right? We wanted to make sure he got confirmed and be supportive of him, but we also had to make sure we were protecting the interests of the company going forward. And so we spent, like I said, the better part of 60 days just preparing all of these binders. Well, we had a deadline for when we had to get them to the White House. And this was after the September 11th attacks. And so they no longer had what used to be called Delta Dash, where you could just go and put a box on a plane and send it. So we got down to the wire, and we were pretty sure that we were going to have to put somebody on a plane with these boxes as their checked luggage and send them to Washington, D.C. But our assistant found some courier service that you could hire. And so we get done putting these boxes and binders together in the middle of the night. We had basically, she said, when you get done, call this number and he'll arrange to meet you. And so my dear friend, Adam Hollingsworth, who was my boss at the time, we get done. Adam calls this number. The guy makes arrangements to meet us. We pull into the parking lot. He literally pulls in a white panel van.
Oh my God. Stereotypical.
Yes. Shows up, opens the side panel door. We load these boxes that are literally going to the White House in the side of this white panel van. He closes the door and off he goes. We thought he has no idea because he was delivering them to a law firm, but we're like, if he knew what was in those documents, and we were really trusting of this man that we just sent all these documents out to, let us know when you get here. But here you go. Yeah.
So you say 60 days to prepare all of these documents. How long are your work days? Are they pretty much round the clock for 2 months?
Pretty much around the clock for, for that period.
Do you have any babies by then?
No, I did not. That would have been probably 2002 into 2003. So I did not have kids at that point.
So the experience you got in 60 days.
Right.
It's crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah. You could have never gotten us anywhere else.
It really, and that's the thing, right? That's the dog years of this. You have that type of experience. Or, I was there when we had an incident with a train that kind of got out of a rail yard without a person in it.
Oops.
And makes its way through.
Wait a second. It's just kind of got
out of I'm not sure if the statutes of limitations are up, but in theory, the rules are that you're not allowed to get off of a train if you're operating it until it has come to a full and complete stop. That did not happen, and a person threw a switch essentially, and then wasn't able to get back on the train in time. And so it got switched, got out of the rail yard, and went a couple 100 miles through the state of Ohio without a person on it. They ended up, if you want to get the details, they ended up making it into a movie with Denzel Washington. It's called Unstoppable.
Okay.
It is the real life story that happened.
So you see the pickup trucks that work on the tracks.
Mm-hmm. High rail. Yep.
Why wouldn't they just pull one of those up behind it?
So that's actually how they did stop it, but it was going at pretty much full speed. And so it unfolded very quickly, right? So it gets out, we start getting calls about it. I remember the receptionist that worked in our office had a couch in front of her office. And at one point, she was just taking messages from incoming reporters from all over the world. Essentially, we were getting calls from Canada and New Zealand and the UK asking questions about it. And she was just writing down these messages as fast as she could. And the entire couch was just covered with messages. And for the longest time, we couldn't return any of the calls because we couldn't really disclose what was happening. But there was one call that came in, and when she went to one of my colleagues about it, he was like, I'm calling that one back. That's just bogus. And so he calls this reporter back, and the reporter says, okay, so we've got all the details. We have heard that the highway patrolmen are trying to shoot out the gas line in order to drain the gas and bring it to a stop. And so my colleague of mine calls this reporter and was like, now that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Why would you shoot a live ammo, right, combustible into gasoline? That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Do not repeat that. That is absolutely not true. Turned out it was true. It was true. At one point they were trying to shoot out the gas lines, which is a good lesson, right, in crisis communication, to never answer questions definitively when you don't know the answer. But
how accurate is the movie compared to the actual incident?
It's pretty accurate for the most part. It took me a while to watch it. It was just one of those weird, I felt like I had lived it. I didn't want to watch it. And then finally, Mike Skipper and I sit down to watch it one day. And about 10 minutes into the movie, he pauses it and says, okay, you're going to have to stop correcting the record on this movie. I can't watch the whole thing with you telling me what is wrong in it. But thematically, most of it is right. You know, they really did try and shoot out the gas line. There really was a train of children on a school field trip up ahead of them that we had to duck into a siding to avoid a collision.
Wow.
And then they really did some very brave individuals. They put another locomotive actually in a siding backwards, essentially. And when the train went forward, they backed this locomotive in reverse as fast as they could till they caught up with it, and then slammed on the brakes slow enough that somebody jumped on it and was able to stop it. So yeah, it really was some.
Makes me want to watch the movie.
I was going to say,
that's family movie night.
Movie night. Wow,
unstoppable.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, it's just really unique experiences that, you know, we're unfortunate at the time representing the company in situations like that, but really allowed me to kind of hone my crisis communications experience.
Of course,
I would say so.
Baptism by fire.
You really did learn, you know, through trial and error in that situation. So
you spent the 6 years at CSX.
I did.
And then I met you at City Hall. And
Correct.
So what brought you to City Hall and started that course of your career?
So I did. My daughter Caroline was born in February of 2004. And while the Senate confirmation was over, the job was still a, 18, 20 hour a day job in some instances. We used to have this thing called pager duty. And so 1 week a month, you were responsible for calls 24 hours a day, 7 straight days.
Sounds like working with John Payton.
Yeah. Some things haven't changed. But yeah, and I found myself just almost trying to get my child to bed at night so I could get back on the computer and finish work, and just was like, this is not who I am. This isn't the parent I wanted to be. And so I called my dear friend, Adam Hollingsworth, who again had been my former boss and was now working for John Payton. And he said, we've kind of been waiting for your call. So, went over, met with Adam and Susie Wiles, who was running communications for John Payton at the time. And they hired me to be John's press secretary. So I was 20 or 29 years old at the time. The irony is that I didn't work on John's campaign. In fact, Adam and Susie and I all worked on an opponent of John's campaign. And the three of us all ended up in John's office. So, and
on a dream team, by the way. I know. Like all the names of the people that work together and on staff.
We really had a great really had a great staff.
The beauty of it is they got to work with some unbelievable city councilmen along the way.
Should we talk about the Daniel stories?
It was the joy of the city hall, I think, at most times you dealing with city council.
Yeah. We can tell some Daniel stories, which, again,
there were some fun ones. We had some fun times, and you look at City Hall today, and it definitely is different than we were there.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean that we always agreed with each other, and that's kind of what you need to have, the push and pull of the legislative and executive branch. But there was always a mutual respect that we had.
That's right. Yeah.
So.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Daniel knew everything. Just ask him. Like he was.
Well, you got to think that we were all pretty young back then. And when you're young, you're like, you don't know.
That's right. That's right. No, it was, again, to your point, it was a great dialogue and working relationship. And we didn't always agree. And, but we got through it. So
what's the craziest thing you remember about City Hall?
Gosh, I don't know if I can tell most of those stories.
Is there an issue that was like the biggest back in the day that you remember, or anything that pops out?
You almost can't process everything that comes across your desk, right? And we were a fairly small office. And so while everybody had their lane and their role, you kind of caught whatever issue was coming to you. I guess I can tell the story there. Like, I ended up managing an issue where there was an elderly woman who was a substitute school teacher, and she had checked out a video from the library that someone had dubbed some homemade video on top of.
Oh, wow.
And she got fired from the school board. She wasn't allowed to substitute teach anymore. And so she hired legal aid to represent her to be able to get her job back. Well, in doing that, she kept the video, which meant her library fees were continuing to rack up every single day.
Of course,
and then then she gets to a point where she goes to try and check out her video, or to go and check out another book, and they won't let her because her library fees have become excessive. And so it's just random things. Like, I'm negotiating now to get a woman her library card back because her fees are in excess of, whatever amount of money. And anyway, it's just
a little bit different than CSX, right?
It really was a little bit different, the things that come up. But, storms were always crazy.
Yeah.
You just remember, you lived at the operations center for 5-7 days. Again, I think the statute of limitations are up, but there was one storm where I think we had been in the operations center for 5 days straight. We didn't see daylight. And for the most part, the storm had passed. And we were stir crazy. And so I convinced the then undersheriff at the time, who was a gentleman by the name of Dwayne Centerfit, to take us on an assessment ride so that we could get out of this stinking four walls. Right. And so we drive around the city kind of looking at damage and things. Well, we pull up to an intersection, and next to us is a red Corvette. Now, we are still in lockdown, right? And next to us is this red Corvette, and the Corvette is in a right turn only lane. We're in a straight lane, in I guess an unmarked vehicle at the time, and the light turns green, and this Corvette just punches it in front of us and takes straight off. So there were a couple of us in the car. We then convinced him that it was his obligation to go chase this car down and stop it. Which he does. He later informed us that we didn't really appreciate what it meant for the undersheriff to pull someone over, because we pull into this parking lot behind this car. He goes up, and then about 8 other police cars pull into the lot because the undersheriff has now made a stop.
Pursuit.
Yeah, hot pursuit. Turns out it was like a 16-year-old kid who was driving his dad's car, had no clue what was going on.
You guys were pent up,
right.
Stuck in a building 5 days.
That's right. The undersheriff was like, I hope you're happy with yourself. You've now scared to death this 16-year-old kid. I was like, well, we may have saved his life for next time. So there you have it. Yeah.
So now you play a pretty big role at GATE Petroleum, which is an incredible, private company here in Jacksonville that gives so many people jobs across our city. How did that take place? Obviously, you worked with John at City Hall, but what was the talk about you moving over to GATE?
So when John left office in 2011, I actually transitioned to the Dalton Agency and kind of led their PR and communications group, and worked there for about 5 years. And then, I did some work on and off for John, kind of on the side, communications things. And then he called. The company at the time really, I don't want to say didn't have a marketing department, but they were very vendor driven, right? So the vendors would tell them what they wanted to market, how they wanted to market them, what they wanted to do. And, they were kind of looking to elevate that. And so he called and said, would you come over and kind of amp up our marketing department on the convenience store side? Which I did. And then about, 30 days into the job, John's like, oh, by the way, can you also maybe take on all government affairs and political affairs for the company? And I'm like, sure. And so, I've been there, it's almost 10 years. Yeah. And it has just been a constant, hey, can you also take on, can you also take on? So it's
a hybrid position.
It is.
But that's how you make yourself so valuable that they can't live without it.
It really is. I try and, when I talk to younger professionals, it's something I always say, like, the answer is always yes. When you get asked or offered an opportunity, the answer should always be yes. Figure it out, right? Not just because you become indispensable, but because you become You get to expand your area of knowledge. You get to, meet new people. You get to show that you have skill sets beyond what your, small little work area is. So the answer should always be yes. And at least up to this point, my answer's been yes.
Yeah.
Misty,
And
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, T.
I was just going to ask who's responsible for putting the homemade cookies right next to the register, because whoever that is has gotten my money
Marketing
every
genius.
single time.
That's you, right?
Yeah,
That's
those
right.
white chocolate macadamia. I'm still a huge advocate for those. People ask me, what's your dessert like on cheat day? And I tell them it always includes those cookies at GATE from, the GATE convenience store.
Yeah,
So
we appreciate it.
yeah, whoever's responsible for that did a great job.
There you go.
Of product
Take
placement.
Yeah, that was me. It was all me, TJ. All me.
So you make it into GATE, which is a family, and there's beautiful things about that, but also things you have to deal with when you're dealing with a family business.
Yeah.
You were invited into a leadership role, which hasn't happened before for a young female executive. Talk through that, and what was that like for you to kind of break through?
It I'd say throughout my career, it's not uncommon for me to have been either the youngest person or the only female at the table in a lot of instances. I'm fortunate that I've had good bosses and good leaders who have helped kind of pave that way for me. And I've always felt like I'm never going to question why I'm there, right? In some instances, I might be there because they wanted a woman in the room. I'm never going to question how I got there. I'm going to make the most of my seat at that table.
Yeah, that's good.
And so when I joined GATE, it took a little while for me to kind of demonstrate that I fit with the organization. To your point, it's a family-owned company that doesn't have a lot of turnover. And so to bring someone in from the outside, let alone a female, let alone someone who is coming in at a pretty high level, it was different. And so it really took some time for me to build trust among other people in the organization. And then to your point, got invited to sit at the executive table. And now we've been able to expand that. And so now in our senior leadership team meeting, there's actually 4 women that sit around the table, which is really great because we bring different perspectives and different views on things. And so, I've had mentors in the past that say it's really one thing for you to climb the ladder. It's another thing for you to pull people up behind you. And that's something I've always really tried to do.
I love that. Especially I'm a girl dad, that.
Yeah.
So I have 2 daughters who are in their mid-20s and are basically starting their careers, and to know that those opportunities exist, and they like you said, they have to take advantage of the time that they're given, the opportunities they're given. And I have to think that that's why you got invited to GATE, is because of, what you did in City Hall and how you performed when you had those smaller opportunities, and then you are given more responsibilities. And so it's just kind of a stepping stone. But a lot of times I think, and you could speak to this because I know you're passionate about mentoring young leaders, but young people get kind of impatient, and I understand it. Early on in their careers, they want to be at the top right away. Doesn't always happen that way. So what would you say to young leaders, young professionals who have some ambition and really want to be further along than they really are, or than the opportunities exist? Like, what would you share with them?
It's a great question, TJ. And one of the things goes back to something I already said, which is always be willing to say yes, right? Regardless of what the opportunity is. Even if you think, why am I doing this? Or no one's going to pay attention to it. Saying yes is a really great thing. I remember at one point when I was at CSX, I was working for Adam. I went to him one day and said, I'm really struggling with my role. I don't own anything, right? This person over here has this territory. This person has this focus. This has this responsibility. I don't own anything. I basically sit and wait for you to throw something at me. And he was like, that's exactly right. And from my perspective, that's really helped me succeed, because it's given me the opportunity to show a breadth and not just focus on one particular issue. So that's number one. Number two, it is just hard, right? It is hard. And I try and instill this in my kids and, spend time with Daniel's kids, and they're the same way, knowing that in many instances, you can open a door for them, but it's their job to go through it. And so that works with people I mentor too. I'm happy to make calls. I'm happy to make introductions. I'm happy to put you forward for things, but ultimately you've got to earn it yourself. You've got to show them why you're willing to put in the hard work. And putting in that hard work today really does set you apart, sadly. But, demonstrating that you're willing to go that extra mile, that you're willing to put in those extra hours, that you're willing to learn something new in order to be successful really does help you. And then just accepting that, these types of things don't happen overnight.
Right. Yeah. So there really is no magic formula. It's just hard work and consistency and just persevering.
You make the most of the breaks that you're given. I mean, you have been fortunate to be in certain spots, but each time you're there, you perform in each one of those spots, and that creates another opportunity for you.
That's exactly right.
And so that's something that I think is critically important for everybody out there, that especially the ones starting out now. And speaking of starting out, talk a little bit about your kids. I know I know both of them really well and love them to death, but I think there's some bright kids that are coming into Jacksonville's future.
I can talk for hours about my kids, but Caroline is 21. She's a senior at Samford University, and she is going to school to be a child life specialist. I don't think she'd mind me telling her story, which is that when she was in high school, she had some medical issues that landed her in Wolfson, not the least of which is she had 3 concussions in 4 years, had some medical issues that came as a result of that. And in part of her hospitalization, she came in contact with a child life specialist that really just had an impact on her. And she has always had a giant heart. And she's always had a heart for children. And she really felt like this was the calling. And so she went through a competitive process, and she was able to secure an internship at Wolfson starting in January. So she'll be, so, the mom and dad in us is hopeful and prayerful that she'll knock that out of the park, which we assume she will, and then maybe get offered a job and stay in Jacksonville. That would be ideal. But we'll see. We'll see where her path takes her. But she's a great kid. She's really bright. Again,
her personality is perfect for that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's such a personable young lady, and just being around y'all and being around her a little bit, she doesn't know a stranger, and she makes people feel welcome. It's so and quickly, and it's just really cool to see. So.
And it's funny you say that. She's actually pretty introverted, like her father. And Rebecca Davis. Usually she would prefer to be in a smaller group, but she is really great at engaging with people. In fact, I think, this, I took her to London on the mission trip with us a few years ago, and we got separated at an event. And so I was trying to find her, and I go over, and she's standing in a group of adult grown businessmen in the middle of London having a conversation about affordable housing. And I was like, okay, my job here is done. I'm going to go ahead back to whatever
that makes me think you have to tell the story about her concert that she got to go to in London. I think that it just shows you take advantage of the opportunity.
She's
her personality.
So we were at a reception in London, and one of the business folks that we work with in London on business recruitment was having a conversation with Caroline and I, and he said, kind of, what are you doing for fun? Mom's working during the day. What are you doing? And she went to museums, and he said, no, you're a at the time 20-year-old kid. What are you actually doing for fun? Are you doing concerts or shows? And she said, I would really wanted to go see Dua Lipa, but the concert was sold out. And I said, I even looked to buy resale tickets. I couldn't even find where they were on sale. And he said, where is she performing? And I said, at the Royal Albert Concert Hall. And he said, I'm on the board there. Hold on. And he makes a call and comes back and says to me later on that night, I'll see what I can do, but I should be able to get tickets. He says to Caroline, how many tickets do you need? And she said, well, I would need 3. Mom and Dad and Mr. and Mrs. Davis have an event that night. And so I'm kind of responsible for Gabe Davis that night too. And my brother, can I have 3 tickets? And he said, I'll see what I can do. next day he texts me, and this gentleman texts me and said, I've got the 3 tickets secured for the kids. They're coming from Sir Elton John. And
I remember that. I was in London with y'all when that all was going down. It was pretty crazy.
So yeah, the 3 of them trot off to go see Dua Lipa at the Royal Albert Concert Hall. But to your
guest
point,
musician, Elton John.
With guests, Elton John came out and made a special appearance. So yeah, our kids.
Perfect picture of Gabe Davis. Just shows up, and Caroline did all the hard work. Misty texted me and said, "Hey, I would love to see the kids go to Dua Lipa." And I went, "What's a Dua Lipa?" Because I had no clue. Now I'm a big fan.
Now you're a big fan.
Back then, I didn't know what a Dua Lipa was.
I showed him a picture of her, and he was like, "Okay,
yeah." Gabe Davis was drugged, kicking and screaming to that concert too. I'm sure.
But he realized he was
changed his mind pretty quick.
Super fun. So. We always ask our guests a couple questions as we dial in this show.
Hold on real quick, because I can't
talk Noah.
I was just going to say I can't pass up my son. That would be very unfair. He'll be 15 in a month.
He grew about 3 inches today.
He did. So he's 14 years old. He is 6'1", wears a size 14 shoe. Wow. They're estimating probably 6'6" is probably, I'm not going to say 6'7". Right?
6'7".
He'll be happy that I said that. But he's a great kid. He's really athletic. He's very kind and caring. Mm-hmm. I told him the other night, I said, what makes you different from other teenage boys is that you're actually sweet. And he's like, what's that mean? Why am I sweet? But I was like, you actually think about other people and you think about other people's feelings. And that's not common for a 15-year-old boy. So he's a good kid.
Super bright future, fun to be around.
Yeah. He's
always
a fun
laughing.
He is.
So good.
That he is. Anyway, yes.
No, I didn't want to, I forgot about making sure that we handled that. But so, okay, first question.
Yeah.
You've got one of the coolest jobs in Jacksonville. You get to work with John Payton every day, 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
And so you didn't always start off in these interesting, fun, exciting jobs. What was there a job when you were growing up that maybe was the hardest or one you didn't like?
So the job I liked the least would probably be considered some people's dream job.
Okay.
So while I was going through college, and when I'd go home for the summer, I would work at Disney. And for a couple of summers, I worked at one of the resorts there. And I worked in the recreation department. So I would hand out life jackets and rent boats. And that part was cool, right? You worked with a bunch of kids your age. You screwed around all day. You got to wear Umbros and a polo shirt and sneakers to work. Yeah, it was awesome. Loved it. But one day a week, I was responsible for opening the fishing hole.
Wow.
And so I had to be there at 6 a.m., which was really early for a college kid who was out really late the night before. And I would have to go. And what it turned out the fishing hole was unpaid babysitting. So all of these parents would wake up, they would send their kids to the fishing hole unsupervised and expect you to help their kids fish until, they woke up. I don't like fishing. I don't like live bait. Yeah. And so after a couple of times when I was struggling with, I'm not going to put the worm on the hook for you, I'm just not going to do it. One of the older guys that worked in the department said, I've got a trick for you. On your way in the morning, go past the cafeteria, ask them for a roll of pizza dough. And you can ball up pizza dough and put it on the hook. And, the fish will eat that just as well as they will the worm. Awesome. So that made it better.
It's a life hack right there.
It really was, yeah. But having to get up super early and go fishing, and, those poor fish, God, when someone would actually catch one that was really bad, I'm not sure how many of those fish survived my, taking the hook out of their mouth. I know you're not supposed to, but I couldn't actually stand holding them. And so I would put a towel around them, which I know is not good. And so it was just a bad situation. But
I thought you were going to say you put your foot on them, but that would be worse. So the towel's not as bad as that.
Yeah, but no, not my ideal situation. So,
but working at Disney, that's pretty cool.
I'll tell you, I think everyone should have that type of opportunity.
Yeah.
They really are first in class when it comes to customer service, how you're interacting, learning to deal with challenging people. I mean, it really does teach you a lot of valuable life lessons.
That's not so bad.
Yeah, that was great. The fish part, not so fun.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. So, do you remember when we would go across on what was the big lake when you first come in?
Buena Vista.
Well, yeah, Lake Buena Vista, and you see all the kids riding around in those little motorboats.
And those little boats, yeah.
And you just go, man, they got to be rich. I was like, we took our own sack lunch at Disney, snuck that in, and all the other kids would buy the big guns at Pirates of the Caribbean, and my mom gave me, a squirt gun. It was like, man, those kids are rich riding around in the motorboats.
I'll tell you though, being a college age kid working at Disney, it was a pretty fun experience.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, you would work all day, you'd get off at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. At that time, the parks would be open, till midnight, 1 a.m. You'd go and ride roller coasters all night long and, go to Pleasure Island.
I was going to say, was that back when Pleasure Island was? I remember that.
Yep. I was too young to get into some of the clubs back then because I wasn't 21 yet. But you'd go to Pleasure Island and, sometimes go to bed, sometimes not. Sorry, kids. Before you rolled up to the fishing hole at 6 a.m. and
maybe that had something to do with the lack of patience for that.
Too.
Yeah. I remember those days when TJ'd go, "We're young, man. We can do this.
We can do this." We'd be at the edge till 2 a.m. and then
I had to be at the Omni to park cars
or go build swimming pools in the heat.
Oh man, that was a lot of fun. All right, so we're already over time, but I want to make sure we get to a really important part, and that is, did you bring a picture in?
I did bring a picture, and based on our conversations earlier, it's not going to surprise you. I brought in to show you a picture of my kids and my husband. Oh yeah, him too. On a recent vacation that we had. And so
is tall. He is.
And that's probably 6 months and 3 inches old at this point. Yeah. But, I think the last kind of what it makes me think about is that when I'm talking to younger people and trying to mentor them, they always I get asked a lot, like, how do work-life balance? How do you manage work-life balance? And I always give the same answer, which is there really isn't work-life balance. It's a fallacy. When you work and when you have a spouse and when you have family, there is no, I can balance equally these two things at one time. And this is just a reminder of that, right? That the truth of the matter is you're always going to have competing demands on your time, your job, your spouse, your children, yourself, your friends, the rest of your family. And the only way to manage it is just make sure the same thing isn't always first and the same thing isn't always last. If you're always putting your job first, then your family and your relationship and your children are going to suffer. But there's times when your job has to come first and everybody else has to understand that. There's times when you have to make your relationship with your spouse the priority. There's times when your children need to come first. So just making sure that that's a fluid exchange and, being able to take time away from a crazy job and a demanding boss, to spend vacation time with my family where we can just focus and make sure that they recognize that in that moment they're first in my priority list, I think is just important. And I appreciate that opportunity.
So where was that?
That is in the Dominican Republic.
Oh, fun.
I bet you that was a blast.
We had a blast.
Get away with your family.
Noah drank his weight in virgin strawberry daiquiris.
So they're free.
Yeah, that's right. It was an all-inclusive.
To your point, Misty, I think from my perspective anyways, and having known you for a few years now, you are always there for the most important things. And so you do make those a priority. Your job is very demanding, but I think you do a great job of making sure that your kids know how much you love them and that you are there for the most important times in their lives.
Yeah.
So
thanks, TJ. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks for serving Jacksonville and thanks for coming on Speak Easy.
Yeah, of course. Was fun. Thanks for having me.
A lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
We went way over the top.
That's okay.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in to Speak Easy Jax. If you enjoyed the conversation, follow us on our social media platforms, share it with a friend, and make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.